Hey folks, it is meeting time for SIG release. I'll give just a moment for a few more folks to join in now. Just at the top they are. In the meantime, as folks are joining, if you could remember to just jot your name down in the attendance in the meeting minutes, that would be awesome. All right, it is a minute past, and I had started jotting names down, and Raghunath and Savita, I apologize. I thought you were a different S initial, and sorry about that. So this is the SIG release meeting for January 29th. It is already. The meeting is recorded. As with all of our community meetings, we ask that you adhere to the code of conduct and be good people to each other for the duration of the meeting, if not always. We have a relatively sparse agenda this week, so if there are things that you want to talk about, feel free to drop them in the agenda. Otherwise, I'll kind of go through the couple of things that have been jotted in there so far. I don't believe Caleb is around today, and Stephen Augustus is traveling today, so we have a smaller group in terms of coordinating what could be on the agenda, but obviously it's a conversation open to all. So the first thing that I wanted to call out is our sub-project. So last week, Stephen merged a PR that's linked there, but it's really just placeholders for a couple of the sub-projects we've talked about, which leaves all of the actual definition, like what are we gonna scope and aim to accomplish and narrow down to some specific actions so that we can aim to deliver something at the end of the day in terms of improvements on those things. So if folks are passionate about some of the things that we've talked about in terms of sub-projects, then I think if you look in the minutes just a little bit below in the document for January 15, there's a much bigger list of things there. The one that I had thrown in there, since I'm here to talk about release engineering, is one that I'm interested in, and just this last week, or like interested in contributing to personally. But last week there was a really lively discussion around packaging and debs and RPMs, and Ben is snickering there in the video. So basically, Hannes Horrell had been looking at things from the branch manager perspective, how we could improve things, and in parallel to that, SIG cluster lifecycle, because especially like the KubeADM tool, it consumes these debs and RPMs. They were looking at some improvements, and there may be sort of parallel tracks there. So Hannes was proposing a KEP that I think is a useful thing to have to articulate like what we do and why in the big picture, where SIG cluster lifecycle is doing some maybe more tactical actions that improve the situation for them. And we need to balance that. So cluster lifecycle is looking at things on the build side, but then there's the whole publication and hosting side, and then also we're on the hook for signing of those packages as well. So there's a lot of things that fall under our domain, aren't formally specified just yet. And I don't know if there's something you want to say about that, Hannes, if anything more has happened this week.
No, as far as I know, there was nothing happening this week. I didn't have as much time I hoped to work on that. So my takeaway is, for now, SIG cluster lifecycle is checking on the building part, and I will try to check on the publishing and releasing part with the people inside Google who are currently doing that. Another thing I want to do is incorporate all the comments that we've got already on the first cap, which is basically only handling the building side of things, and then see how we can, if we want to create a second cap for the publishing. I know there is already one. I think right now there are like 3 caps floating around, and I want to, I don't know, merge them to some extent, maybe into one cap or just cross-linking them. But yeah, I hope to start working on that the next days.
I feel like one of the things that came out of that meeting last week was a sense that multiple people felt it would be better if the things were just left separate, but I feel like it would be better to have a single point of information on the overall flow, even if the subparts of it end up owned or driven by different people. The split, especially with the 3 different things in flight and tons of issues, and then also the work group, Kate's infra, like there's just, it's too fuzzy, it feels like.
I like the point that Caleb brought up from a user's perspective. It's one thing, like a user wants to have a package and wants to understand how it gets built and flows through all the things until the user can download it by whatever means.
With
I
my
like
SIG
that
release
perspective.
hat on, yeah, I feel the same way. Like, release isn't just publication. Like, there's a set of artifacts that are created for reasons and use cases that back up with the users and the whole pipeline. Then I feel like that gives a better end deliverable if we pay attention to that in whole.
However, right now I think we might keep it separate and hash them out individually and merge them eventually, or like having a, I don't know, an umbrella cap or something. But I guess that's details, and we will see how it goes when we start hashing out the individual caps as they stand right now. That would be my approach.
Okay, that seems pragmatic in the meantime. Ben, it almost looked like you might have been going to say something. Okay.
Oops.
So the other aspect then, aside from just documenting what we intend to do on sub-projects, I feel like the documentation, some of that is maybe, like it's critical and it's not always easy, but like that is the easier part than actually doing. So we also need to understand how much sort of organizational ability within the SIG and the set of volunteers and folks we have present to actually take on tasks and do things so that we get things done. So if whether release engineering or the bigger list of things that we think we're responsible for as a SIG, if you're on the call and those things call out to you, like I'd encourage you to get involved both in the definition phase and then as we transition those things into actual specific issues and are implementing things. Oh, I do see Caleb's on. Anything you want to add there?
No.
Are there any other sub-projects that folks want to talk about today? Okay, I'm going to move on to the next one then. I feel like this is semi-related. Google Summer of Code folks have sent out a call and they're looking for topics. I feel like in a way this general space of release engineering, there's bound to be some tools, the development of which would be constrained enough for an intern to possibly contribute to, as opposed to some massive KEP, but within there might be some point tools that people could work on building things like that. But and Josh, it looks like you've got a particular idea. Do you want to talk about it?
Well, so I have some money for outreachy. And so I was looking at having an outreachy, putting up, an ad for an outreachy intern for either spring or summer. That probably to work on some of these test infra visibility issues that we know that are out there, areas where we would like to have an interface or a tool to make some things more visible. Like right now, whether it's flakiness or better, less confusing visibility for analyzing test failures, or something else. But I'm also looking for other ideas in that area. I think certainly if we can do some things that are related to visualization, that would help us have a better pool of candidates. Because stuff related to, for example, packaging and builds, etc., I've found it's harder to find students and other folks as candidates just because there's just not as much of a pool of people who learn that kind of thing, if you follow me. It's
Yeah,
more of the,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
that's more of an on-the-job experience thing, to put it another way. Like I don't know any college class that teaches software packaging.
This is very true, and I guess there, in my mind, part of it comes down to having a well enough spec'd deliverable and the extent to which the mentor for the project would be able to commit time, be hands-on, that sort of stuff to kind of lead and guide the project versus them getting something more general and just diving in and being able to deliver, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I see the critical thing here is actually having someone commit to being a mentor, right? Like we have a lot of flexibility in terms if someone will commit to being a mentor.
I'm extremely interested in mentoring, but finding the right project to propose has been challenging.
Okay. Well, do you want to work together in this in chat?
Yeah.
I mean, this will cover both GSOC and Outreachy, depending on who we get. We can honestly have, for some kinds of projects, we can have the same project on both. I mean, the basic idea is that an Outreachy intern should do 2 to 3 times as much as a GSOC intern.
Okay.
So like the GSOC projects would be like, let's take a larger idea and break it down into some individual components and also propose those for GSOC.
Yeah, I've been looking around. I did Summer of Code was the first time I touched the Kubernetes project, and I'd really like to close the loop there. So I've been talking to release and testing and lifecycle and things, trying to find something that fits that scope to propose, but I haven't settled anything yet.
Mm-hmm.
I do have one project there that I've talked about a little bit with you. Well, I guess I've mentioned it, that it would be nice to get someone to actually automate those go, no-go signal reports and maybe add some visualization there to see how we're burning down on those over the days. Maybe do some experimentation or maybe testing as to if the format changes, whether the rate of issues drops off more quickly or not. But some code that we could run to kind of play around with these questions. What is the most effective way of organizing this information? And like we do have both the Airtable stuff that Zach worked on and the Go signal reports that Dan and I worked on for 1.6 are 2 examples I'd love to see just running all the time, because it's not that much work and I could help with scoping that.
Yeah, and actually for GSOC, or as a small component of a larger Outreachy project, more Airtable stuff would also be an option as a thing. Or even iterating on whatever we have at the point that the summer starts.
That is another aspect of this. A lot of the things that we're talking about improving, and I know Aaron's not on the call today, but looking at 1.14, like he's really trying to drive people to think about what can we do this cycle, and summer is a ways away, so we do need to be mindful of that sort of event horizon, that we don't have a bunch of awesome ideas that we all get implemented in the meantime.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the challenges for Summer of Code is going to be that the Summer of Code projects are supposed to be more sort of specifically defined and concretely defined. And so it means that you have to have something that you actually want that's the appropriate amount of work, and that nobody else is going to work on between the time that you write it up in early March or whenever, and the time that the project actually starts in June. It's actually honestly easier with features than it is with infra, because waiting 3 months to fix something that's a real problem in infra is a long time. Now, the things haven't dragged on for longer than 3 months, but it wasn't because we planned on them dragging on.
I didn't catch your comment, the context, Caleb.
There was troll tags to finish staging.
Staging, like build publication staging?
No, well, Kubernetes staging. Actually finish that, invert the dependency tree.
Staging repos.
So it works in the way you would explain it to someone.
Okay, that's definitely a troll. Right. Hi, student who's in your junior year in computer science.
Well,
We'd like you to rejigger all of Kubernetes build infrastructure without breaking anything.
Well, I mean, who said anything about not breaking anything?
So one thing you mentioned there reminds me of one of the things that I was curious about, and I'm wondering if maybe Mike Arpaia has thoughts on the aspect of the release notes around dependencies, and that listing is something that feels like it could be a project-sized cleanup to make something more machine readable and managed in a way that's consumable by a tool.
Yeah, I think for sure that. And I would also love to see some of the existing tooling that we have in K-release that's written in Bash, perhaps broken up into like Go library code and tested and integrated into like some more kind of build infrastructure that's more consistent with like how test info works and stuff like that. So I think there's a few little like well-scoped projects with some of the branch manager tooling and the release notes tooling, and I would be for sure happy to participate in brainstorming some of those.
I know a lot of people really like Bash, and I personally am fond of Bash, but I wouldn't complain to see some of what we have go.
Yeah, I mean, although I guess the challenge there, it seems, is that all of that Bash was written in want of a modern build, a modern CI CD system. Like the important parts of Anago, you would imagine, are no more than a 30 lines or so when used or invoked in such a system, like a Jenkins X or a Concourse, that, just having to build all of that by hand, like fine green build, if there's no good reason for any of that function to exist, right? It's like, that is literally what Dual does, is it gates on this stuff, promoted when all the stuff is green. But it's like things like that. It's like, maybe not so much for writing, but like, thinking about the actual fundamentals of the problem, like what does releasing Kubernetes mean, and how can we use tools that exist today but didn't 5 years ago when we started on this, rather than just a pure rewrite.
Yeah, I mean, I just know that I remember like 2 releases ago, there were some bugs with like the release note shell script or the rel notes rather shell script. And it was just really challenging to like not only extend it, but to like write a test to assert that a certain like subsection of the functionality of the tool was like doing what we expected it to be doing and stuff. So it was just wound up being really challenging, and doing like finding the the key 30 lines of code, rewriting it as a testable like pure function in Go, writing the test made everything a lot easier. So while just hitting a pure rewrite, I don't know if is super necessary or a super awesome use of time, but I do feel strongly that a whole mountain of Bash, it does not like lay the foundation for long-term productive software engineering objectives.
Yeah, I don't disagree with I guess I disagree with the assertion in general, but I think in the specific case, looking again at what the goal of the tool was originally would be helpful, because the general problem of scraping release notes from thousands of pull requests is like maybe not a well-formed problem itself. Maybe we should have like a repeatable, scalable process for generating release notes. And perhaps that is the challenge that we should have solved before building out the rel notes tool that solved the problem that we had today, at least as we conceived of it, years ago.
Sure, but even just from like a maintenance perspective, the code that is in Kubernetes/release, as well as some of the things that are in like the build and hack directory in Kubernetes, can be very challenging to even determine what it does and how, because of things like implicitly depending on environment variables across scripts which are not documented. And that sort of thing can be made a lot better with even just a cleanup or a rewrite pass without broader, more extensive long-term redesign. Because we're paying those penalties right now just for, even in terms of the number of people who do know what it's doing. And I'm not sure that any of us actually does know what all of it does.
No, I would certainly assert that no one knows what all of the tools do. But I think that, you know, the problem of what we're trying to do here is like release Kubernetes. I feel like there's more work to define what the actual problem statement that this group is supposed to be working on before we get to working on or modifying the tools. Because again, like if the technical challenge is scrape PR like or release notes from 1 to 10,000 pull requests, that itself is perhaps not a well-scoped problem to invest or to maintain code to work on. If the actual problem is like, you know, for these 30 enhancements or 20 or 10 enhancements, make sure that there are good release notes. Maybe that we don't need several hundred lines of bash at all if we look at the problem we're trying to solve for the community.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess one of the problems that we have now is that despite endeavoring to focus on the problems, is like we do have this mountain of bash that we have to reason about maintaining on a release to release basis and stuff like that. So while even the problems that the current tooling we have may not be so well defined, we do still have the problem of maintaining the perhaps not so well defined solutions as well.
From a maintenance perspective, one of the things, so I think I hear two things being described there. One, just like fragility maintenance, but also like long-term sustainability of the project. Do we have enough people able to contribute? But I feel like one particular benefit, one of the things that I really like about Go personally is that there's a built-in assumption that you're going to write unit tests. And for all the bash scripts we have, their testability and understanding whether they work as intended is a big gap.
I mean, I guess it's just your philosophy for approaching bash. Like I've certainly spent many hours maintaining a fragile test suite for my bash written in TCL expect, but like that's obviously not everyone.
I bet we can totally find college students who are well versed in that technology to implement something.
I don't know.
Well,
like,
I guess
I feel like we can set our aspirations higher for college. So like my first week
how about just rewrite everything in Python or Ruby?
You'd really be surprised. I can't get into what, but I will say that we have new grads on my team. It's sort of including me-ish, and we're using TCL.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I used it, I don't know, within 1 year of graduating. And certainly that was the first use of TCL expect at that company. So, and also within 1 month of graduating, I had a commit against the kernel. So with enough support, people can do most anything.
Said that's probably not something we want them to.
I don't know. Like I wrote a paper saying why this commit was required, and it was like evident that you could have published it if people were so inclined to do that.
Well, we probably don't want to re-implement the Kubernetes tooling in TCL.
Or use eBPF to do it in the kernel.
There's something else to be said for whether or not you think a tool is good or not. And I've looked at this for some projects that I created in this ecosystem, that moving things to Go means that more of the existing contributors to other parts of the ecosystem are going to be familiar with it.
Well, I think we've brainstormed relatively quickly a number of areas where we could do something potentially of interest. So we should circle back on this and over the next week or so, maybe. I don't know, Josh and Ben, do you want to lead some focus?
Yeah, Ben and I will talk, and I'll also create some kind of a document and share it out so that other people can comment and contribute ideas.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think the main thing is I believe the deadline is actually like next Wednesday to submit a proposal for this year's Summer of Code. So if anyone has any ideas, reaching out.
Oh, yeah, right, because we have to, if we're going to do it at all, we have to have like 3 sample proposed projects.
Right. Yeah, and that's been the thing. Like I'm totally up for it, but like I want to invest in picking things that I think are likely to actually wind up being projects, because to me, which project is not that important as long as I can actually help with it. I want to get involved this time.
Yeah. So who else aside from this SIG? Presumably we have other SIGs that are interested in GSOC, because it's going to be GSOC as Kubernetes, not as SIG release. So who's in charge of GSOC for Kubernetes overall?
I believe that's Paris.
Nikita and Paris. So Nikita had sent out an email 2 weeks ago, and then yesterday what triggered my memory to talk about it today was that Paris had sent out a reminder yesterday saying, hey folks, remember to be thinking about ideas.
Okay, so we don't actually have to come up necessarily even with 3 ideas ourselves. We just need to come up with 1 or 2 of them. Because the thing is, what the students actually do can be something different. It's just that Google won't accept us if we don't have, you know, as a project, if we don't have at least 3 solid potential project examples, because their attitude is if you can't come up with at least 3 examples, then you're not going to be ready to mentor anyone.
Okay, well, do you wanna, when you do that, send it out to the SIG mailing list also, and give it a shout out on Slack?
Okay.
I mean, like Ben, I've benefited earlier in my career from mentors, so I really feel a call to give back on these things, and I think we have good opportunities that are approachable for people in our SIG. So next on the list then, KubeCon's intro and deep dive session. So KubeCon EU in Barcelona, intro and deep dive session proposals are due, I think, like a week from, I don't know, sometime next week, by the end of next week at the latest. It's February, some single digit integer anyway. We'd briefly talked about this a bit ago. I'm totally willing to do like our standard at this point intro topic. Aish had done it with me in Seattle, and if anybody is interested just in giving it, I would be happy to hand it off. Otherwise, if somebody wants to like sort of co-present or like get a softer introduction to presenting, happy to do that with anybody who's interested. And then deep dive topic. Should we do a deep dive for KubeCon EU? I would tend to say yes, just because, like, I mean, Josh was saying maybe not do a deep dive in Shanghai if KubeCon EU and North America are sort of bookend 6 months-ish apart that have a critical mass of attendance. I feel like we should be present trying to hash out something significant. But
Yeah, so I guess the answer is you know, for somebody to step up who's willing to talk about their portion of SIG release, regardless of what that portion is. Because, like I said, I felt the one in Seattle on build tools was I felt like people liked it.
I learned
and we're
stuff in
interested
it.
in it. Yes. So what else can we do that SIG release does that would be interesting?
I could see the release engineering topic and improvements to that, a status check on that being useful to people.
Well, if I took on the intro, oh wait, except I may be actually running the contribx thing, and I don't want to do 2 because that would be insane. Let's say if someone else took on the intro, could we maybe do a patch release team thing? Particularly since you're reorganizing that, and so stuff will be different by the time Barcelona rolls around.
I'm happy to do that. I'm presuming Alexandra and I haven't actually talked about it, but she is Europe-based, and I've sort of presumed that she would be there.
Okay.
Anybody else itching for a reason to go to Barcelona?
I mean, I'm always itching for a reason to go to Barcelona, but I've given a lot of these. So certainly, if someone wants to take the lead on giving one of the talks, I'm happy to sit there in the back, like I usually do.
I won't call out anybody by name, but I know we've got a number of people on the line who are relatively new to SIG release, and I would love to have, if any of you want to reach out to me, and I'd imagine Josh the same, if any of you are slightly curious, you want to chat about, feel free to reach out to us on Slack, or Caleb as well, and we can talk about some ideas. And I mean, like the intro, for example, is a relatively turnkey, like we have a couple of decks of things already and fairly easy to go with that, or you could have, to your heart's desires, the ability to extend and change and customize and personalize if you want, and make anything you want of it. So there's a lot of opportunity there, I think. So then, so that was EU Barcelona focus a little bit more. So China, Shanghai, it seems like as we've been talking about that, we don't necessarily have folks who are planning to go, or more so we have folks who know that they won't be, probably.
Yeah, well, I'll be there. So I could definitely do the intro. Yeah, if there isn't anybody else. I mean, I'm already doing several other things for Shanghai. So if there's somebody else who's going to Shanghai and doesn't have time on stage, it would be better for them to run the intro. But if we don't have anybody else, it's easy enough for me to do.
Yeah, so again, opportunity for somebody newer to get some presence and visibility out there, and something good for your resume, I guess, or however you want to look at it. Like it's an opportunity, and it's a great place to volunteer and help out the SIG as well. Because I guess I'll say I feel like a number of the folks who I'm thinking of, you all have come to us partly because something caught your interest in the SIG. So that I feel like you could present that with authenticity and maybe encourage the next wave of people to come and contribute to our SIG as well. Well, that said, that is the stuff that was listed on the agenda. Nobody has added things. Are there things that people would like to talk about in the remaining time? So Ben mentions going to Barcelona, but not sure about doing presentation. I have a question semi-related. Do you know if the Kate's Infra working group is planning to submit anything for intro or deep dive session?
I don't know. I actually have been missing those meetings recently.
I feel like there's bits of overlap, and it might be a place where a deep divey BOF or something to sort of talk some big picture roadmap for where we might go could be something beneficial.
I don't know if anyone here saw this, but there is a KEP related to artifact publishing that seems very relevant to the SIG that you all should go look at and view.
Do you have a link?
Group. I don't have the link handy, but I can pull it up in a moment.
It might be one of the three that Hannes was talking about earlier, or else it's the fourth now.
Might well be.
That's a bit of a messy one because it's from the email on it, but let me drop the issue. There we go. That should be the KEP I was thinking of. It was initially targeted at another SIG as sort of just a proxy and more so being owned by that work group, but there's some discussion about probably, SIG's own things, and this seems like the SIG to own it.
Yeah, that is one that was on my radar. Hannes, is that one of the ones that you were aware of?
Yes, I saw that going by. Did not have much time to check on it yet.
So
Yeah,
far, this is the strongest overlap between that work group and the SIG.
okay. Yeah, I feel like this is, I was surprised that it was initially proposed as contributor experience. Oh, and I see, Stephen, I've seen this one going by in my email that haven't kept up with all of the notifications on it, but yeah, but it feels like we are the natural place for that, and it dovetails with the stuff that Hannes was trying to get a better handle on.
I brought it up on the same respect. I was just catching up on that in my inbox.
And Lena Sarvar on the line or on the call, he had presented at the community meeting week before last, I feel like, something along those lines, about a container image promoter tool, and he's noting that he's submitted a CFP to talk about that in Barcelona. So yeah, that would also be something interesting. If for some reason it didn't get selected, it might be something that dovetails with kind of talking about this release engineering space and changes that are coming for improvements. So I guess the one thing we just need to decide so that we submit something by the end of next week. So I will follow up. I can definitely submit an intro one, and if somebody wants to co-present on that, let me know. We can hash out an idea on the deep dive on Slack and get something submitted. And then Josh, do you want to, I'm not sure that the stuff for workgroups and SIGs is open yet for Shanghai, but can I just note that you're going to submit for intro there? Okay. All right, well, if there's nothing else anybody wants to chat about, we can call it a day. Call it a meeting anyway for the day. All right, thanks for the discussion, folks. Have a nice 43 minute, 43, I wish it was 43, 23 minutes back in your afternoon. Bye.